Welcome to the Faith in Media podcast, and we're hosted by the organisations Christians in Media here right in the UK. So a huge thank you to everybody that has been subscribing, joining, listening in to our podcast since we have started. The comments, feedback have been so positive. So please continue to send those through. We love to hear from you. And of course, any pointers and tips that you would love to hear on our platform is going to be so welcome. We are here to create an environment that is safe, and just engaging for everybody to engage with some really important topics about faith in media. I'm delighted to be joined today by the one and only Kat Wordsworth, the author of Let's Talk About Doubt. Welcome, Kat. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Kat, you have authored an incredible work. And before I go into the details with the book and talking about yourself and your journey, I do like to have a little bit of fun and ask kind of some icebreaker questions before we really get into it. So kind of one of my basic questions to ask, and obviously it's probably a little bit expected because we're faith in media, but is there a go-to social media that is a preference to you? Twitter, Telegram, and even Threads that seems to have kind of emerged onto kind of the scene. What is a go-to for you and why?
It is Instagram for me at the minute. I have a Facebook account, which I don't really use anymore. But yes, Instagram seems to be just such a supportive place. I've really found that it's not a stressful environment to be in. Or maybe I've just found non-stressful parts of it. But yeah, I find it just a lovely place to be, and I've met some lovely people. So yeah, Instagram. Instagram is my place of choice at the minute, and I haven't been brave enough to join Threads. I'm very risk averse. So I'll see how it goes.
I feel that really resonates with me. I've seen it and I've been quite suspicious, as I'm very honest with you. Like you, my favourite platform is probably Instagram as well. And it's lovely to hear that you have such a positive engagement with it. I know that's not always the case for many people that get involved with social media, but to hear kind of that your experience has been kind of stress-free, but it's been a really positive space, helpful space to not just yourself, but I know that what you're doing with your social media is really uplifting a lot of people trying to navigate some really challenging times. Tell us a little bit more about your platform in media with social media. How did that kind of come about? Especially as I love that it's very authentic. You've got some lovely, your branding is beautiful, really classy, really seen, but at the same time, it's got a very down to earth. It's so engaging to the every person, so approachable. How did you get onto that platform and then start to use it for kind of what it sounds like what your mission has been behind the work that you've been doing and kind of the message that you have?
So really, it's quite a ridiculous story, really. It was lockdown. I think it was such an odd time, wasn't it? Really kind of changed our wavelengths on a lot of things, and I reached a point where I needed to let the thoughts in my head out in some way. So I did the absolutely cliched thing of starting an anonymous Instagram account to just let some of my thoughts about faith and doubt kind of out in a cathartic way, with no pressure, no intentions. I didn't let anybody know about it. It didn't have my name attached, anything like that. I needed to know that I wasn't the only person. I was aware that kind of Instagram was used by faith communities and kind of it's as a way of connecting with people who have similar experiences to you. So I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. I'll see if I can find anyone like me. And I did. And it grew and grew. And yeah, it's been a huge surprise to me because I lived for years thinking that I was the only one to struggle with such enduring serious doubt. So to find people constantly saying, "Oh, me too, that's exactly how I feel." Instagram isn't just a way that I've had to share my story. Instagram has actually been a part of the story. It's been a real catalyst in releasing some of that shame that doubt had caught me in.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you've actually mentioned that actually Instagram had become part of the story, part of the involvement of what's kind of like become kind of the kind of impact of where you've landed. You know, it's culminating in the book is the ultimate kind of, this is the place where you've kind of kept your challenge as a, like you said, cathartic process for others to view, observe, and also find themselves in it. It was a brutally honest engagement, I think, on issues with doubt. I really enjoyed, you know, reading the book myself, and I feel like the way that you have captured, and it sounds like you've already received feedback, like it captured so many people's thoughts that they've potentially been afraid to say, or they're not sure themselves as to what does that really mean for me and what impact does that have. And you've done it in such a way that hits the heart of it, in a way that I love the fact that you attack shame. You don't allow it any room in your navigation of it. Tell us some more about just that process. For me, it sounds like that's a really persistent thread in your writings. Like, this is not something to be shamed about. And I wondered if you could share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is it. That is the point of why I do all of what I do. I am an extremely reserved, really quite shy, non-confrontational person. You know, I'm not comfortable doing any of these things, but I have to, because I was so caught in shame and fear and guilt and isolation with doubt for so long. I absolutely tore myself apart with it because I didn't know it was normal. I didn't know it was, you know, a common thing that people go through. And now that I've managed to get through to the other side of that by hearing other people's voices telling me that I wasn't alone, I have to try and do the same for other people. You know, the book is kind of fed out of Instagram. And really, I've written the book, as lots of authors do, I've written the book that I wanted to read myself. So it is, I think I say in the introduction, you know, it is brutally honest and quite uncomfortable for me to read back in parts. And I had to take the decision to kind of leave that stuff in, because I find that so often when we are retelling our stories in hindsight, we gloss over the most difficult parts and we gloss over our worst feelings and our worst things that are going on in our minds for the sake of positivity or for the sake of coming across better or for whatever reason. And that's fine. I think that's human nature. But the impact that has on other people is that you think, well, maybe they did feel a little bit like me, but nowhere near as bad as me. You know, I'm still worse than them, so I'm still an outcast. You know, we have to know that we're not alone and that other people have been there before us. So yes, it is a raw and honest offering. But I just hope that it helps. Yeah, I hope that it helps release shame for people. That is exactly why I bother doing any of this, is to try and let people know that doubt is normal and it is nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah, I love that. And I think from what you've described, the response to it shows you actually the community of that feeling of feeling doubt is so much wider than perhaps we've even potentially scratched the surface, because people are afraid to talk about it. Why do you think issues of doubt in faith are kind of not normalized within churches or within the Christian space?
I mean, that's a whole book in itself, isn't it? I think
This is it. Who best to ask that than someone who started writing about it?
Yeah, maybe. I suppose there's a few factors on there. I think because we don't talk about it very much, that is a vicious cycle. So the more we don't talk about something, you know, silence absolutely breeds stigma. So if you don't hear people talking about it, then if you experience it, you don't talk about it. And then the next person that experiences it hasn't heard you talking about it, so they don't talk about it. And the cycle continues and continues. And I think what all of that is driven by is just this fear and suspicion of it. But because we don't talk about it and we don't have this kind of communal wisdom that doubt can offer us, we see it with such suspicion, such worry that it's a failure, that it's a failure of faith, that it's weakness, that it's going to mean that we leave or completely abandon all faith in God. We've got really kind of, quite extreme extreme places that our minds jump to when we hear the kind of word association with the word doubt can go straight to kind of not being a Christian anymore. And I think as long as we don't talk about it, that kind of relationship with doubt and fear is going to persist. So yeah, that's why, as someone that is a Christian but struggles with doubt, that is why I try to speak as loudly as I can about it. Yeah.
I love that. I think in your explorations within the book, there is still, for me, it's kind of built on a canvas that is still very faith-filled. And I know that might sound really interesting, but that was something that really just stood out for me all the way. And I think one particular section you speak about, sometimes we actually have a disregard that there are potentially time lapses between, say, the verses in the Psalms that really delve deeply into despair, into doubt, into questioning. And then at the end of that same verse, maybe 3 or 4 stanzas down, a very long psalm, we see that faith is restored and an acknowledgement of God is back in place again. Or, even some of the other biblical narratives, I think of Joseph, how many times he faced incredible challenges and difficulty, and yet
absolutely
we forget, as those looking in hindsight, we forget there are time lapses here. We don't know what that process was like. And it's interesting. So biblically speaking, there is clearly scope where doubt potentially is actually amplified. But our interpretation of it here in this Western world, I think, is a lot like what you explore in terms of we see it as some form of failure and doubt. Is there something to be said about, is it a cultural interpretation of doubt here? Or where do you think that comes from? Because I don't think that, biblically speaking, doubt is actually someone that's a stranger at the table, if that makes sense, amongst, versus biblical figures, etc. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, this comes with all the caveats that, I'm not a theologian, not a Bible scholar, not a church leader, all of that. I think what I have observed as playing a part in this is that we're desperate to draw people in. We're desperate to build up our church numbers, build up our communities, and kind of demonstrate to people that the blessing that becoming a Christian can offer to people. And I think we just get a bit confused about where doubt can fit into that narrative. It doesn't quite fit in the, become a Christian and your life will be transformed kind of promise that we quite often offer, which is true, but obviously it isn't as black and white as that. There's a lot of nuance. Becoming a Christian isn't, a fairy tale passport to a, happy ending with magical, whatever. And I just think that's very difficult to navigate, with a lot of life. We exist a lot of the time in the grey, not in the clearly defined happy or sad. A lot of life is in between and a bit of both. And I think when that kind of translates into church situations, it's difficult to draw people in while also saying you might still really struggle. Which I think also, leading back to what you said about the Psalms, I think that all feeds into the same thing. So I think with the Psalms in the book, I'd put that in, because one of the most common things you get told if you tell someone that you're struggling with doubt, or if you Google it, is, well, have you tried reading the Psalms? People struggle in there, so maybe that can help you. And of course that's true. I think it's Psalm 88 is the one that doesn't end happily. And the number of times I've read that psalm, I think my Bible opens that page probably. That offers me huge comfort and huge solace. And of course the other bits do too. But why people tell you to read them is that they hope that you'll quickly move on to the ending and quickly get over whatever it is that you're struggling with and get to the praise bit. And that pressure can feel quite a lot. And I know from other people that opening up and telling people about your doubt, to then be told, well, that's all right if you fix it really quickly, just get on with it and sort yourself out as quick as you can, because that's what they did in the Psalms. And I think that's why I included it, because it's just this idea that no, it takes time. It can't be rushed. It has to have integrity. It has to have honesty. You can't hide anything from even yourself to try and force yourself through it quicker. It can be really difficult. The conversations can be really challenging about doubt, and that's why I talk about it quite a lot in the book, about what things are helpful to say. So yeah.
And I've for one really appreciated that approach, and I think from the tone of how you describe that and explore that in your book, it's almost an embrace of that tension. And like, we need to embrace that there are sometimes processes to this that are not going to necessarily have a 5-point plan guideline. It's not even a self-help kind of thing. And watching, I think there's such a diverse range of experiences within both the Psalms, and I think even mentioned figures like Job, who've got massive time lapses, and also friends that try to help him during is a devastating time. There is process there that is not one size that fits all. And getting to a place that those that tend to be in the community of those experiencing doubt, or we are the close confidants of those in spaces of doubt, we have our part to play too. And it, I think, to kind of avoid kind of falling into the trap where like, it's not a contagious disease that now automatically things are all going to fall apart. We have our part to play, and it's a good place to be. It's part of this tension. And also, I think probably an element of, we can trust that also God is also good with that, because there's many examples where it shows us that he's not afraid of those moments. These are human complexities, and they don't faze him in the way that it's phasing us right now as well.
Yeah, 100%. That was a real turning point for me, was actually just looking at how Jesus responded to any admission of doubt in the Gospels. So I think Thomas is obviously the famous one. Lord, that's the Father, sorry, with needing to touch Jesus' hands. And I think the impression that you get from sometimes being in Christian communities, or if you've had some bad conversations about doubt, you would expect Jesus to react with kind of absolute fear and disgust and anger at this admission of doubt. How dare you? I'm stood right in front of you, and you're daring to say this. That is not his response. He literally moves closer to allow Thomas to touch him. And then with the father with the ill child, who, again, right to Jesus' face, says, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. This child is still healed. As much as I wish there was more of a record of what was said next in the Gospels, it is still an act of compassion and healing. It's not what we sometimes expect, I think. It's not the response we have to ourselves sometimes. I beat myself up about it. I didn't show myself compassion and love. I was disgusted with myself and couldn't believe I could get rid of these doubts, and did everything I could to try and get rid of them. So yeah, reading those accounts and letting them sink in really just allowed the kind of the pressure, the building pressure of, oh, maybe I'm going to be absolutely condemned because of this, and God's not going to look at me or hear me or even notice me because I'm thinking these things. So that was a huge turning point for me.
And you mentioned as well that even during this, there's been some real low points in the book where you speak so candidly about what that felt like, how that was experienced by you, and yet you never left the church, you never left community. What was it that you felt that kind of kept you there during this time of challenge?
It's a funny one in hindsight. I can't quite believe I didn't leave church at some point. At points it wasn't a healthy place for me to be, because what I was doing was going every week hoping that something would happen that would make it all click into place. I was going with like such hope, and then having my heart broken every week when nothing miraculous dropped out of the sky that proved things to me. But I think actually what kept me going was friends and community. And I think that's an advert for church, isn't it? That even when I was really struggling with it, it was the deep relationships that I formed with people there that kept me going. And still sometimes now that is the main thing. I go to be with these people who know everything about me and still appear to like me. So that is what church is to me, is feeling safe in the company of these people and knowing that I'm still welcomed and I'm still included, even if I'm completely honest about things. Yeah.
I love that so much. And I think not enough of that, I think, is kind of, amplified and kind of really honed in on, because really it's those relationships that keep us connected.
Yeah.
Genuine community, genuine relationships. Do you really care enough to pursue me just as the person that I am in my space of, complex challenge? And for others, it might look different. But I think really was quite powerful. And I think if we were to take a step back, objectively speaking, we could even put that into the bracket of, was that potentially another way that God was also trying to reach you and show his presence? Like, love is tangible in the people I put around you. And what wonderful community that you had to keep you in that space.
Yeah.
How since the publication of your book and really seeing, I don't know if they were all been aware to like the degrees of what you were going through until reading your book, like what's been the response since that time from these people that they probably have underestimated the level of anchorage they provided for you during that time?
It's a really interesting one. I'd say the people that have found it the hardest to read are the people that are closest to me. Even though, I had been honest about things, my way of expressing myself is writing, and I let myself be completely honest when I'm writing in a way that I'm probably not always when I'm speaking. So yeah, I've had one friend who has had to stop reading it for a while and put it down because she was just so heartbroken that she wasn't fully aware. And yeah, that does make me feel a bit bad as well, because obviously I didn't tell some people about it, but that wasn't ever a reflection on them. That was just shame lying to me. So yeah, it's been a really fascinating one that, the people that are closest to me have found it hardest to read, and the people that I don't know have found it the most kind of encouraging and inspiring. But I suppose, of course, your family and your friends are always going to think, oh goodness, we didn't know, and we could have helped if you'd let us. And yes, well, I'm telling you now, I'm reconciling it all and trying to heal it all now. So here I am. This is me in a book form. So yeah, it's been an interesting run.
I love that so much. And you mentioned a bit earlier about, this was such a huge step for you to put this first in writing for yourself, then getting to the place where like, okay, I'm going to put it in wide and open view for the general public. Tell us, how did that feel for you? And just seeing that publication come into practice this year when the book was released.
I mean, I'm supposed to say it was all magical and a dream come true, aren't I?
You don't have to at all.
Absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I think my journey to publication was not the norm. So I didn't write the book with the intention of anyone ever reading it.
Really?
No. It was a way for me to work it all out. And, like Instagram was part of the process. The actual writing of the book formed part of the book. Writing it created the ending in a way. It was my way to process it all. And by writing it out and, making it readable, giving it an order, giving it structure, I was able to take a step back and kind of assess what had been happening. So to then kind of take that and be like, I'm willing to let anybody in the world read this, I think was just a real sign that the shame had started to dissipate.
Amazing.
This is something that I kept secret from my closest friends and family for over a decade. Now, I can't overestimate how much I tried to keep this absolutely secret. And now there's a book about it. So something has shifted. Something really important has shifted within my heart and within my mind. And that has to be God, doesn't it? For me to be willing to talk about it. And I genuinely don't mind talking about it. I don't feel embarrassed. I'm willing to admit to anything. I think once you've been through that shame and got to the other side of it, there's just this huge freedom that you can really, I can say what I want now. I just have to be honest with myself. I can't bear anything that isn't complete honesty, because I know the impact it can have on me. So yeah, it's an absolutely ridiculous story, really. I think, and I still pinch myself that there's a book about it all. But yes, it exists. And again, the reason is because I hope it helps other people.
For sure. I can see that. And also, if I love how you mentioned, and I think many will resonate with that process, where the person that you see in person and interact with it's not a different person, but it's one layer, but the depths of it you find easier to articulate through your writing. What I love is that you've put yourself in this brilliant position of, if you've got any further questions, please refer to the book and it will all explain itself, that you will never have to go through trying to explain it.
Yes, I actually not use that.
I was just like, this is a very smart move. I
find myself kind of literally quoting from it without people realizing that's what they're doing. Once I've formed it into words, that is my opinion, and that's what my mind goes back to is how I've expressed that. So yes, if you want to get to know me, read my book. Yeah,
honestly,
it's a very marketing strategy.
It is. And also, I think like it's demonstrative in terms of, I know that you mentioned you don't see yourself as a theologian, or you're not here to tell people the directions, but what you have done is demonstrate tools that people can use, and effective tools. And many will have come through, different kind of, there's been lots of, I think, pointers to this. Something about when you write down your thoughts, we hear this about journaling, and this is a form of therapy. And there is something about writing it down. If anything, the written word in the holy book that we, observe so much in our Christian faith, there is some more emphasis on the written word itself. And yet that's still a method for us to engage with probably some of the deepest depths of who we are, and really formulate, like you say, where am I in this? Because being insular in the mental health space can also lead us down different paths, but don't always get us the kind of structure and kind of like, I feel a bit settled that I really know where I am, so now I know what to do next. And using that form of writing, I think, is so underestimated. Would you encourage that as a kind of form for others who navigate, challenging spaces, even if it's not doubt, but maybe other things? And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously everyone's different. I've got some friends who can't bear writing and are kind of external verbal processes. But for people who can connect with writing, I think it offers you the gift of perspective, because you have to, unless you're kind of writing a stream of consciousness, which I suppose some people, that is a different kind of tool, isn't it? But you have to kind of pause and consider and reflect, and we don't often allow ourselves that time in life. And if you can make time to kind of sit back and think, actually, how am I? And what am I thinking about this thing, if I give myself a chance to consider it? And the other thing about writing is, if you're doing it on a computer, or even if you've got, a rubber, is you get to go back and you get to edit and refine and clarify and really pick away until you work out exactly what it is. And I think it was that process of kind of writing and then rereading it and then tweaking it a bit that really helped me to start thinking, okay, this is what I think. And that was underneath that hiding, and I didn't realise that before. But writing 4 pages to get to one sentence has helped me understand. And now I can just keep that one sentence and delete the rest, because that was only there to get me to this. So yeah, writing's a real gift. And yeah, I'm very grateful for it.
I really, really love that. And it's something that I think that's certainly something that I try to use as a tool, but I'll try and do it in songwriting or in a poem, and like you said, sometimes it is just a stream of consciousness, but the whole, you've given yourself the space. We live in an age where there is just so much potential for distraction and to consume
loud,
right?
Like,
and like you said, I think many people will also resonate. Like you said, it was during lockdown where actually we don't have the luxury to be distracted by going into work, or like the constant expectation of, interacting with lots of people outside our internal selves. For the first time, we were stuck with 4 walls and our thoughts, because there was nowhere else to go. And that really was a breaking point for people, you know?
It was a sanity move, because I ended up, I am not a teacher. I walk into a school and I get a headache almost instantly. And suddenly I found myself homeschooling children whose kind of year 3 English grammar was far harder than anything I've ever learned. And it was just, yeah. And so I was doing that in the mornings, trying to cram in all of my work hours in the afternoon. And then by the evening, I was just thinking, I'm going to lose myself here if I don't have something for me, a project for me. And I think, yes, something about that time did just add a bit of depth and introspection to all of our lives. It kind of, yeah, it was hard, wasn't it? And it made us really think about things. So I think, yeah, that was what pushed me to it. It's homeschooling. Yeah.
I respect that. I really do. I want to go back just a little bit to what we were speaking about, you know, that social media in terms of Instagram is really the starting point for you about this. And, you know, a lot of, you know, media, you know, it can be a tricky place to navigate. Yours sounds like has been a really positive. How did you find yourself not getting sucked into, you know, comparison? Because there's a lot of other faith type pages in Instagram that are very much about, should I say, probably would be like fuel on the fire to someone navigating doubt and questions when it appears that things are just potentially overly sensational, or they're not seeing the full picture, they're seeing an end result. That's not to say that what they're experiencing, what they're sharing is not true at all, but it's more to do with that is not helpful necessarily to someone like what you were going through. Is like, how do I find what they're talking about for myself? And I can't seem to grasp that. How did you navigate that space, and how would you encourage others kind of to navigate that space too? Because I think that's quite a big element of today's living.
I think the kind of baseline is that when you're vulnerable, so when you're struggling with doubt or anything, and you're looking elsewhere for kind of help with it, we're like sponges, aren't we? We're very open to taking stuff in, especially stuff that isn't helpful. But yeah, Instagram or all social media, it's got the extremes of life on there, hasn't it? Whatever you think you're going to find, you'll find it a million times worse and a million times better, I think, in some ways.
Yes.
And I think I can't pretend that I've always had a good relationship with Instagram. And I suppose what I mean is that the people I've found on there have been lovely. My own interaction with it has been, it's a continual work in progress. To start with, when it was all anonymous, I didn't feel any kind of pressure. As soon as I'd kind of decided to go for the book, and then, you have to kind of prove you've got an audience and all of that stuff. As soon as that entered in, it became a lot harder, because I started to, comparison got in, because a lot of Instagram, or a lot of the spheres I'm in, is people like me trying to build platforms to get publishers to notice you to write books. So there's a lot of people putting their absolute hearts on the line out there in order to build a platform to get written, to get published. And that can make it supportive, because there's a lot of people going through what you're going through, but it can also make it, rife with comparison and jealousy. I think for me, I'm never going to be someone that is able to post every day and put my face all over my stories every day, or have, a content schedule. I can't maintain that. And if I try to maintain that and fail, then that would be damaging. So I think I just have to do what I'm able to do, which doesn't feel like very much sometimes, but it has to have integrity. I can't post about my experience with doubt for the sake of it. I can't allow myself to do that, because the content I'm putting out there is me, is my deepest thoughts and worries and questions. And I don't really want to kind of, I don't know quite what the right word is, ironic for an author. I don't want to kind of
be unauthentic in any way.
I'm not going to remember the word. oh, I'm written 10 minutes time. Exploit, that's the one.
Right.
I want to exploit myself for the sake of numbers. It has to be sustainable for me. So yes, I'm definitely not one to follow if you want a kind of exemplar of how to use social media, but I do what I can, and it seems to connect with some people.
I really love what you said there. And it was actually going to be one of my questions is how would you advise our Christians in media community about, what does it mean to have integrity within the media, those that are launching into platforms, whether it's social media, that's a starting point for them, or they're creatives, or in any other platform that they find themselves, like, what does integrity look like, particularly as a believer? And I love that you mentioned that's like, you need to know potentially what are your intentions. Like you said, your life is what you're putting in this. It is effectively almost a testimony, if we're going to use Christian language about it. And these are the things that draw people. The people are looking for something real. It can't be something that isn't. So I really appreciate you kind of amplifying, like, for me, this is what integrity looks like. And we do have to take, I think, that very close look in the mirror and evaluate what does that then therefore look like for me in kind of my navigation of this space. I would say, like, what is there kind of like some form of, advice maybe you would share for others in Christians in media in terms of, are there boundaries and safeguards we can put in place as to how to navigate that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, boundaries was what I was going to talk about next. I think you have to be really careful, because social media, like kids' video games, like apps, they want you to stay on. They want you to be on there. That is how they make money. They want you to see ads, and they're designed to draw you in and keep you scrolling. So it goes back to the things that we all know we should do but struggle to do, like setting time limits, screen limits on your actual phone, but also saying to yourself, this is my cutoff point in the day. I'm not going to look at it past that time. I'm not going to look at it first thing in the morning. I'm going to leave my phone downstairs. Those really, really sensible things that we all don't do. Obviously, that's a different kind of scenario if what you're doing is professional or your job. But it's just, I think I really liked what you said about, it comes down to remembering why you're doing what you're doing. You're not there to become a celebrity, and you're not there to build a massive platform necessarily. You're there to reach people with your message, whether that's one person who really needs to hear it or 10,000 people that really need to hear it. And I think the other thing that we can so often forget is, I don't know whether this is maybe an awkward point to make, but kind of Instagram isn't the whole world. It's not the be all and end all. Other people exist. So it is remembering the scope of what you're doing and remembering to connect your work to the outside world as well, and thinking, well, maybe if I reach that person on Instagram, they'll tell their church on Sunday. Your message can kind of spread in ways that you weren't prepared for. And it all comes back to what you're actually giving, what you're presenting. And if that has integrity and honesty and value and is relatable to people, then that is the best that you can offer people, I think. Yeah.
I think that's just so encouraging and such wise words there. And this will be my final question back to you. Someone who has taken the brave step to, set a platform and discuss and hold court on a subject that people are not comfortable to do, and what it's done for you from when you started the work of the book to now today. Like, do you see changes in yourself? What has this done for you in your journey?
I mean, I feel like I've covered the shame element of that. Yes, it's really, really helpful. And I think kind of the flip side of that is that as your shame decreases, your confidence and your trust in your own opinions and your self-forgiveness. I don't think that's really a phrase, but you know what I mean. It's allowed me to have compassion for myself, to think, I'm not alone in this. I'm not an oddity. I'm not the only one doing this.
Yeah.
You know, community and connection is hugely important, isn't it? That come back to what I said about church.
Yeah.
And of relationships with people that you can build through whatever means be life-changing. And I think, yeah, that has been what Instagram has offered me.
I love that so much. Kat, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your work, and just your amazing opinions. They are absolutely authentic, and I've enjoyed every single morsel of it. And please, before you go, tell us, where can people find and follow your work?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram at about_doubt. And my book the classic line, isn't it? It can be bought where books are sold. I think it is on Amazon, but if you prefer not Amazon, it can be ordered on the websites of Waterstones and WH Smith. It's on Eden. So yeah, if you Google it, it comes up. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kat, and all the best for your future endeavours. It's been an absolute privilege to have you. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll get to chat to you once again soon. Take care.
Thank you.